Well, this just into CBS Sports HQ. Our Dennis Dodd confirming that both Texas and Oklahoma are set to inform the Big 12 that they intend to leave, and a joint statement has just been made of exactly that fact. The University of Oklahoma and the University of Texas at Austin notified the Big 12 Athletic Conference just now that they will not be renewing their grants of media rights following expiration of 2025. Universities intend to honor their existing grant of rights agreements. However, both universities will continue to monitor the rapidly evolving collegiate athletics landscape as they consider how best to position their athletic programs for the future. So that news just coming into CBS Sports HQ as we welcome in our Dennis Dodd for the latest on this. Now, Dennis, what is the next step? How does this process all play out from this point?
Well, the next step is 4 years from now. I mean, the biggest takeaway, I think, from that statement is that Texas and Oklahoma intend to honor the grant of rights, which really holds the conference together. If you leave the conference before the contract ends, then the conference owns your TV rights. So Texas and Oklahoma, as it stands right now, intend to play football, all sports, in the Big 12 for the next 4 years. And that could get very, very ugly. What happened today is just a procedural matter. They had to notify the Big 12 that they did not intend to renew the grant of rights in 2025 when it expires. Now the SEC can issue a formal invitation whenever that comes, and we don't know when that's going to come, but I expect it will be soon. But the way I read it now is they're going to play for 4 more years. If they left early, Jenny, Texas and Oklahoma would each owe the Big 12 $80 million if they left before the 4 years was up. Now, the grant of rights, as I just mentioned, is in place, but I think in the next 4 years we'll probably see some legal dealings, some lawsuits, and maybe they can get out of that early. But again, if they play 4 more years, you're going to see some very ugly things in the stands, and I think on the field for these two schools that left the Big 12 high and dry.
What does this mean for the Big 12 moving forward? You know, it does say that 4 years from now there are going to be changes, but how do you see these next 4 years plus playing out?
Well, the Big 12 has an advantage because of the 8 schools that are remaining. They still are grandfathered on autonomous voting privilege. And what that means is basically they're still part of the Power 5. And any schools that join them would automatically get that autonomous voting designation. It's more of a, you have that choice and autonomy to make your own rules, for lack of a better term. So, I think some of these American Athletic Conference schools would be desirable. It tells me that the Big 12 has a good chance of going on as the Big 12 instead of scattering to the 4 wins. Maybe not these 8 schools, maybe some of them, maybe a small percentage of them. But as long as they are the Big 8 and still have these schools together, I think there's a chance the conference may go on.
A big part of that statement, as you mentioned, not including the SEC in any way, which obviously legally they're unable to do at this point. Is it for sure at this moment that they will be moving to the SEC, or are there opportunities to maybe look at the Big 10 or elsewhere?
No, you don't do this unless it's the SEC. The SEC is number 2 in revenue right now next to the Big 10, but that's the point of the whole thing, Jenny. The SEC would then be number 1, surpassing the Big 10 in revenue, which makes about $54 million per school per year. I believe the last figure I saw for the SEC was $44 million. So then the next question becomes, does the Big 10 have to act? And I think they do. That's how these things operate. These people are, operating with big money budgets, and they don't want to be lapped in revenue. So which way does the Big 10 look? Did they expand? Did they go to 14 or did they go to 16 teams? And what are those 2 teams out there that make sense for them? It's not evident right now, but I think the next play in this is, okay, Big 10, what are you going to do?
Now, you're also in California right now getting ready for Pac-12 Media Day, and obviously this is going to be one of the main topics of conversation. So what are you expecting from the Pac-12?
Well, that's going to be the first question new Commissioner George Kliavkoff has to answer on Tuesday morning when he takes the podium for the State of the Union, State of the Conference address. And it'll be very interesting. I hear no rumblings at all as to them setting up a committee to look at this. I think they've got to act pretty quickly, as all these major conferences do. Does the Pac-12 have to act to keep itself together? Does the Big 10 go out and poach some of these teams to hit a bigger home run than Texas, Oklahoma? I heard rumblings do they reach out to USC and maybe a Washington, grab two top, what would be top 10, top 15 television markets and try to outdo the SEC? Everything's in play now. I think one thing the Pac-12 has to look at is take some of these schools, a portion of them, from the Big 12. This is what Larry Scott did 10 years ago when he tried to hit a home run by taking half the Big 12, including Texas and Oklahoma. They're not in play now. So the question becomes, what are the best programs or athletic departments or schools left in the Big 12? That's not an obvious answer. Is it Oklahoma State? Is it Iowa State? Is it Baylor? Is it Texas Tech? I really don't know the answer to that. The market will dictate. And obviously, the Pac-12 isn't in Texas. So there's some money to be made there because they don't have subscription fees there in their contract. So do they reach out? And don't think about geography. Geography went out the door a long time ago. You can get from LA to Dallas in a couple of hours, 2.5 hours, or Texas Tech, and you can have direct flights. And plus, we're already seeing this, Jenny, these pods being speculated in the SEC. You could have pods in I just threw this out there, as the Big Ten. Think of a pod that would include USC, Washington, Arizona State, Colorado, Nebraska, and Iowa. That's 6 teams. That's not much travel.
Oh, pod is an easy way to do it. What does this mean for the college football landscape as a whole? Are we just going to end up with some, super conferences in the long term?
It looks like it's headed that way. It looks like we're going to have 4 major conferences. But short of that, I think there's another play here that I think is just becoming evident. I don't think it's likely that ESPN pays the SEC in the moment for Texas, Oklahoma. They've got an existing contract with the SEC that goes through 2032. They can sit there and go, hey, you guys did this on your own. We don't owe you any more money. So I think this is part of this is a power play by Greg Sankey. And I hate to say power play, but what has Greg Sankey been talking about? I'm talking about the commissioner of the SEC. He's been really critical of Mark Emmert, the NCAA president, the NCAA, and how they've let things get to this point with NIL. It looks like there's going to be paying player. Well, there's paying players. There's lack of rules enforcement. There's lack of investigations going forward. And I think the SEC could sit there because no one's going to stop them and say, okay, with these 16 teams, you know what? Instead of 25 scholarships per year, we're going to allow 35. We're going to allow unlimited roster sizes. And this is just an example that I'm talking about. And if you want to play with us in terms of play on our level, then you've got to step up in your own conference. If not, guess what? We're going to have half the spots in the new college football playoff, which is expanding to 12 teams. So I think there's a larger play here, and it's less about money than it is about power itself, and the SEC is going to have more of it.
Dennis Dodd, thank you for joining us here on HQ with the latest news of Texas and Oklahoma making it official. They are putting out the statement that they are leaving the Big 12. All right, Brandon, I think we knew that this was going to be the next step in order, but it's going to be a long process.
Yeah, but like Dennis said there, of course, we got a few more years. They won't extend their TV rights after 2025. Also, putting it to bed, SEC or bust, no Big Ten, Pac-12. Dennis Dodd doubling down on that. That's the only reason this is happening. So they got a few more years. We thought maybe 22, 23. But now Texas and Oklahoma releasing that official statement today saying that they're leaving the Big 12. If you're Bob Bosley, you don't want to see this, but it's definitely happening. The University of Oklahoma and University of Texas at Austin notified the Big 12 Athletic Conference today that they will not be renewing their grants of media rights following expiration in 2025. So we might have a super conference in the SEC at some point in the future.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.